Tyfano Unravelling Data Mysteries. Join Paul, Joe, and a diverse array of expert guests on Tyfano Unravelling Data Mysteries, a podcast dedicated to exploring the intricate world of data, insights, and AI. In a realm where talk is abundant but true mastery is rare, we delve deep into the complexities of data science. Our mission is to celebrate those who excel in transforming data into genuine understanding and actionable insights. It's more than just data talk, it's about putting data to work in the real world. Whether you're a data enthusiast, a professional in the field, or simply curious about the power of data, Tyfano offers enlightening conversations and valuable insights into the ever-evolving world of data. The name Tyfano for the podcast has a unique and quirky origin. It traces back to the founders of Tesco, one of whom was John Porter's father. John was a close friend and founding investor in my company Beyond. During the early days of Tesco, when the founders were unsure about the origin of a product, they would exchange a knowing look and say Tyfano, which was their shorthand for fuck Tyfano. This phrase, born out of a light-hearted moment amongst colleagues, encapsulates the spirit of honesty and humour in the face of uncertainty, making it a fitting and memorable name for a podcast that aims to unravel the often perplexing world of data and AI. Our guest for this episode of Tyfano is Dave Callow, the Chief Information Officer at NHS Professionals. We're thrilled to have him here today to share insights from his journey and discuss the future of healthcare technology. Please join me and Joe in welcoming Dave Callow.
Hi Dave, it's Joe here. I'm going to be asking you in a moment to explain how a data-driven approach has reshaped strategies and operations at the NHSP. But first of all, I can ask you what the NHSP is and does.
Hello, it's nice to meet you, Joe. Yes, NHSP, what we are is a flexible working provider inside the NHS, and we deliver all of the resourcing capabilities for a number of trusts, about 55 trusts, for nursing banks, locums doctors type work, non-clinical work, and in the NHS you have quite a large workforce and a large demand, and the ability to be flexible and agile and be able to deliver that demand requires multiple layers of resourcing. So we top up the substantive workforce with those additional workers on the basis of a self-service, shift-driven system that allows a nurse wanting to work overtime to book overtime, a professional bank worker wishing to work on a bank to book those shifts, and also manage the agency cascade so that we minimise the cost and maximise the value for the NHS.
Right, so basically you've got a way of accessing staff data, so you know who's available, who can be available, where they are, and how you can move
It's actually
them.
the opposite way up. Actually, it starts with what do you need, and we have a pool of resources, and you effectively have a shift mark. So we have about 180,000 workers registered on our nursing bank alone. And they're registered at various trusts, and some work at multiple trusts. And we publish the shifts, and about 93% of those shifts are self-service booked. We do about 3.4 million shift hours per month in that area alone. So it's large volume, very highly automated, and very much self-service. So it comes down to supporting the need of the patient and delivering the skilled quality professionals they need in a way that those professionals can choose to work those shifts that are available. So it's that flexibility for all kind of model.
I mean, I'm going to ask you questions in a minute, one just arising from that. It seems to me that what you're describing is a really broad band of data that you're accumulating, and it's moving very quickly because you're constantly having to update the system to match demand with supply.
Yes, it's a very volatile data set, and we have automated that process to take the demand from the rostering platforms that the trust themselves host, feed it through into our system on that push to bank type shift model, and also then you've got to look at meeting the demand. Fundamental, everything in the NHS is about patient safety. So we need to meet the demand to make sure that the patient is given the right skilled person at the right time. So we have a cascade model that says if, depending on the shift, if by a certain number of days, nay hours out of a shift operating, we will push that on to an agency, and we will tier that until we get to a worker that can fulfill that need to make sure that the need is met. So we have a very high threshold for meeting the shifts and demand. The interesting thing is the trusts themselves also need to change that demand on quite a frequent basis. Plus, you then always have the last minute demand, which comes in through illness or someone unable to work for whatever reason. So it's a constant moving beast, yeah, and it's vast volumes of data, albeit each data item is very small. There is huge volumes of it flying around the place as we get backwards and forwards through our trusts, and the automation of that is so critical to the delivery of the service.
I'm really pleased that you've answered that, because for the first time it's humanized to me what data is, because you've humanized it in terms of the staff resources, but also the consequences for the patient. So thank you. Now I've gone totally off script already because I wanted to know.
That's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise. So I'm going to ask you the question I should have asked you, and I said I was going to ask you, which is, please explain to our listeners how a data-driven approach has reshaped strategies and operations at NHSP.
So you've got to start with what's the problem you're trying to solve. Right, and what we're trying to do is get the right person with the right skills to the right place for the right patient outcome at the right moment for the right price. So actually, it's relatively straightforward when you think about it. I've got a set of skills, I know what they are. I've got a pool of people who can meet them. But when you start looking at that, you then start looking at the gaps. You start looking at the inefficiencies. You start looking at the places where you can do that more optimally. So, for example, if I know that I have a cohort of people who are one training course away from having a skill that I'm struggling to meet, train them. And that's why we have an academy, right? Because it's better for the NHS in the wider context and the systems themselves to make sure that we do have the right skills and we are not having to constantly go to higher cost resources. But what is most important is that the patient gets the skills that are needed. So just very simple things of matching demand to fulfillment in the most efficient way makes a huge difference when you're dealing with high volumes. Then you go into the wider context of data and how you make it more usable and how you make decisions based off the back of it, and how we run our own organization, how we make sure we got the right skills and the right team with the right capacity to enable that core function of putting people in places to care. So that, every layer has data. There's nothing without data.
But cycle back from that. This podcast is about the pathways to that transformation as well. So one of the most interesting things that you've just touched on is it's really important for your organisation to be using the data. We've already established you've got huge volumes of data. Not necessarily everyone, let's say, within an organisation understands the data and how to use it and how to work that data. How do you get to that within the organization? Because it's complicated, it's multi-layered, you've got lots of different stakeholders. How have you started to kind of engage with the organization to get people who have not necessarily used data before to actually use data and start to make more informed decisions about what they're doing within the
I think that
organization?
comes in a couple of ways. The first things first is actually make data accessible by making it easy to understand. So if we sit in the room as data experts with a data science head, we'll come up with some amazing stuff that no one can actually have a clue what it means. So actionable insight is more than just insight. And partnering up with experts like yourselves is really important in doing that, because inaccessible data is pointless. We therefore got to start on the principle of who's going to use it. And if I look in the wider IT context, the most successful IT companies are the ones that don't need an instruction manual. They don't send their equipment out with war and peace on how you actually get to work it. They make it intuitive and easy. And we respect that our user community has really good business knowledge. So if you give them the right data in the right format with the right technology to make it easy to access, they will find things in it that you can't even think of. So I think it starts with not what can the data tell me, but what problem do I need to solve and how do I make it accessible? They are fundamental principles, and they're the things that are missed most.
Yep. And how do you put it into the hands of the individuals? You mentioned 180,000 people within the bank. So you're using the data better internally, and you're starting to take people on the journey internally. But how do you put it into the hands of the end users? Because that's where the really rubber hits the ground.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and I think it's back to that persona management, right? So what does a bank worker need to know, and how does the data support them? Well, they need to know what shifts can I have, when can I have them. We need to share and earn their trust in knowing when they want to work, right? Because we can then curate that data better and land it with more accuracy and get away from a scattergun kind of model. And actually, I think it comes down to, if you're a bank worker, when you look at the psychology and the motivation of a bank worker, they are an incredible group of people. They are so passionate about the job they do, and actually they're not necessarily financially driven all the time. It's not, just about earning more money. It's actually about giving better patient care, getting more skills, keeping their skills up to date. There's more nuances in that, and the frontline workers are amazing. So I personally and all of our team make sure we spend time out in our trusts and go and ask those questions to help answer the answers they need, not the ones we think they need. On the corporate work side, it's the same, right? It's sit with the people and understand their problems, get close. Don't sit in an ivory tower and assume we know the answer. Then you've got the practicalities of putting it into an app or put it into a notification, or put it into an actionable item, particularly like booking a shift. We're in the middle of a major transformation, and I want to move us to this world where to book a shift is no longer hunt and find. It's actually, we ask, would you like this shift? Green tick, red cross. Right? We know you so well, we can ask you things that matter to you, and you can just go, yes, please, I'll have that one, or no, thanks, that's not for me.
Yep.
And we learn. Does that answer your question?
So,
So
Sorry, Joe.
it does. I've got one, which is you're talking about building up a relationship of trust with the people that entrust you with the information they're
Mm-hmm.
providing. I'd like to know where the ethics of that lie, both in terms of the material you're getting from the people that are giving you their data and availability, and also the data that you're getting in terms of patients. That means you need to match up, because it seems to me that's a really sensitive, difficult area, given in the edge NHS with the difficulties that you're trying to resolve. That's intimate details about people's lives, staff, and healthcare patients. So where do ethics
So
come
first
into
things
that?
first, we do not have patient data, right? Just for clarity, we do not,
Right.
and for the reasons you just highlighted, we do not have patient
Mm.
data. We don't know who the patients are, nor do we need to. And it goes on that principle of minimum data required. So we have demand data, right, which is this ward needs this skill. We do not know for which patient. We have no idea who they are, and we'll never need to do that. So we are very careful. We do not have patient data. When it comes to the worker data, I think it comes to an informed conversation, because what we're doing is we are providing a service that allows a worker to book a shift and work extra time, and we are getting the minimum data required to do that, but we also need to balance that up with making sure that we have the correct qualifications with the correct person and the correct skills, and also that we are supporting them in their careers too. So I think there's an element of, yes, there's a bare minimum to do the job, right? You need to know who you are, where you are, what you do, right? But there's also that wider conversation about choice, right? So we don't force people to work with us in a particular manner. And as we go forward through our transformation, I want to earn the trust that you want me to suggest things to you, rather than assume that's what I should do. Does
Okay, that's the
Yeah.
principle.
yeah.
That's the principle. Now tell me about what strategies you use in order to ensure privacy.
That comes down to the layers of security. So you've got the core technical layers. You are authenticated, you are encrypted, all your data both in flight and at rest. Everything we hold for you. We also have the right to obviously support the right to be forgotten, to have your data removed, and the rights. We're both freedom of information and subject access request compliant, so that if you need to know what we've got, you can ask that. That's fine. So you've got an element of structural corporate confidence in that. The other thing is, when we look at our trend analysis, we don't go into this bank worker, that bank worker. We do trend over larger data sets. So we can talk about registered nursing, for example, versus specialists or whatever it may be. We don't talk about Mary or John or Bob or whatever.
Okay.
We keep that separate. We only put that where we need that, which is the act of booking and managing the shift and paying the individual. So and we are open to audit. We're ISO 27001. We're also compliant with all of the government directives in terms of data security. So we take that very, very seriously.
Well,
I've got another one.
I've got a question about the technology that you're using. Obviously, you talked about the number of people, the volume of people that you're actually dealing
Mhm.
with, and how to offer the right shift to the right person at the right time in the right location. So we can, but that requires a lot of processing. It requires a lot of technology. Are there any emerging technologies? And this might be a leading question for later on. But are there any emerging technologies that you're actually using at the moment to be able to deal with that huge volume of data, to be able to offer that right shift to the right person at the right time? You talked about app. but how is that being enabled in the background?
So we have we at the moment have an app that is an on-prem, SQL based .NET style app that is running that. We're moving to a cloud-based hyperscale platform, which opens up an awful lot more of opportunities in how to facilitate using that data more efficiently. It also abstracts the personal from the generic very easily. So yes, we are looking at that. Yes, of course, we're looking at AI. Right, show me someone who isn't. I do have a personal opinion that we've got to be careful that AI is not the answer. Now, remind me what the problem was. Right, we have to use AI
Yeah.
in its appropriate place and carefully and sensibly. And what we're looking at there is again trend based. Are we seeing a group of people who are disengaging because we're not giving them what they want? And then how do we go out using focus groups and talk to the individuals and ask them why? And there is that human system interface there where it's not all just about the computer. So yes, there is a lot of emerging tech, and we are very careful about which tech we choose because there is a plethora of everybody's going to solve everything in half an hour right now. And so if I take ChatGPT, which is a great product, you could not use ChatGPT as the ChatGPT engine when it's open to the public. You can't use that way. We need if we're going to use anything GPT related, it will need to be um, private and in our own bubble.
Okay, I'm going to chip in. You've used the word we repeatedly when you're describing what you do, but I want to ask about the word I or you when it comes to leadership. Because given this is such a fast moving technology and data needs to be used responsibly, where do you say the hallmarks of leadership are required in your industry, and what do you say you're doing to demonstrate them?
Again, I think you've got multiple levels on that. One is actually you've got to be careful you don't get so excited about the tech that you lose context of your usage of it. And I think that's a risk for anyone in IT, particularly because we're all interested in this technology. So my job in Chief Information Officer is to make sure that we are sticking to our guide rails of principles and that we are looking at what we are trying to get as an outcome from this service, and we are not using something just because it's shiny and goes boing. Right, that's not a runner. So actually my job sometimes is the no man, right, which is not necessarily a natural easy fit, but sometimes like, whoa, hold on, we're gonna check why we're doing this, because just because you can does not mean you should. The other thing is one of empathy. I think as a leader, one of your biggest skills is empathy, and actually understanding the use case and understanding the usage of whatever it is you're providing from the persona of the person using it is way more important than understanding it from a tech person's viewpoint sitting in a corner with no vitamin D in their system and no daylight. We aren't allowed out much, I know, but we really have to remember there's a human on the end of this wet bit of string. So my job and my leadership team's job, all of us are principled around the human first, the technology to support, not the other way around.
I mean, that's why I'm part of this podcast, because I would never have thought I'd have an answer that had the word empathy in the context of data.
Oh, you
So
can't
thanks for
not.
that.
Like, you do, at your peril, do you not have empathy with data? Because if you are without that, there be dragons, right? You could get yourself to a really bad position if you just don't care about the people who are using it. And ultimately, our data is part of us as humans, is it not? It's part of your very essence of your personality and your identity. So in very literal terms, in some cases. So no, empathy is really critical to technology.
And I think that data becomes abstract, and I think that human touch is really really important. And the empathy that you've talked about is one of my old bosses said, don't do anything with data that you would that would enable you to be seen on the front page of the Sunday Times.
Oh.
And that has stuck with me because that guides us as an organisation. But that you're also thinking about the end impact of what you're doing as a consumer. If you don't want it done to you, then don't do it to other people.
Well, that links
And
in ethics as
yeah,
well as empathy. And I just want to come back to the we, because this podcast is intended to be listened to with learning from for all levels of the industry. I'd like to ask about teamwork, because what you and Paul excel at is making sure that whilst you lead, the team are an integral part of what you do, and they can take leadership roles as and when are required. So just talk to me finally about leadership, about teamwork, and how that's something that you embrace, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a team, I was talking to Paul about this the other day, actually. To me, a team is a collection of individual strengths that actually also cover individual weaknesses. So we've got to be honest about our own weaknesses and the things that we are not good at, because to make a team that actually works well, you want to cover all bases. You don't want everybody the same, everybody strong at the same thing. So to me, my team is very, very important to me. Their capability, their professionalism, and also the checks and balances. We have a very open relationship, my senior leadership team, and I've always said to them since the day I walked in, you must tell me when you think I'm wrong. I don't promise to agree with you, but I do promise to listen, right? Because
Do they?
oh yeah. So some of my team tell me I'm wrong 98% of the time. So and they're probably right about 50% of it. So yeah, they will hold me to account, and rightly so. My job is to make it safe to do so. Because if you don't,
Yeah,
that's where despotism comes in, right? And if you live in a position where you're always right, then wow, what a lot of pressure you've got, because no one's going to tell you you're way off beam. So to me, the team is also part of the corporate empathy, the ability to keep each other grounded, because you know when it's right and you know when it's not, and collectively you've got a
yeah.
really good view of that.
Yeah, I think I mean that is quite a difficult culture to create, and it's also, if you're looking across territories and different boundaries as well, the way in which a culture, an organisation is actually set up, or an entire country is set up, people aren't necessarily used to hearing what you've just said, Dave, in the same way across cultural boundaries. If I was in Lithuania, we've got an extensive team in Lithuania, a fantastic team in Lithuania. However, culturally, we have to approach them differently to how we approach them in the UK. And what you have just described is nirvana as far as most leaders are concerned, which is they're getting the truth back from the individuals in the organisation
But,
beneath them to actually tell them exactly
but you
what's going
can't
on.
not.
Okay, Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, I don't say sorry, but I'm still going to ask the question, which is, if you had to identify the biggest challenge that's facing you in your industry using data, say in the next 1 or 5 years, what's it going to
See
be?
the wood for the trees. I think we've got so many opportunities. You've got to prioritize, because we sit on a vast amount of data, and we've talked extensively about data. The thing you really need is information and insight. Data is a subcomponent. It's not the thing itself, right? Because data is contextless, so it has nothing to give you any actual actionable insight off the back of. So turning data into information and knowledge and wisdom, as we know, when you see the models of how you go about that, that's really important, but therefore wood for the trees, because we could try and do everything simultaneously. So we've just got to build out from a little acorn and keep growing and growing and growing as we get better and better and better at it, and it will become self-perpetuating at that point. And that probably trumps funding. It trumps technology itself. It really comes down to just where do you start and pick your battle.
I think I'd like to add to something that you just said there, which is it's the data. It's not the data; it's the insight that comes from the data. But it's the ability to change the organization as a result of that
That's the
insight.
actionable bit,
Because there's
isn't it?
no, yeah, that's you need to have an organization that, as you've been doing and you guys have been doing, is enabling the rest of the organization to cope with the transformation and do those things that you can actually affect change in, rather than try and do everything. So ultimately, if you start from the outcome, what are we trying to change here, and how are we trying to change the individual's experiences? It's a lot easier to move back upstream to go, okay, well, what data is going to help us do that outcome? So if you start from the perspective of, as you said up front, Dave, we're going to talk to the individuals, understand how they operate, understand what's important to them, and then let's find the data that's going to help us enable that the changes to happen that we know need to happen. Then that's a fantastic place to be, isn't it? It's that outcome based approach to data that I think will make you successful. For organizations at the beginning of their data journey, what's the first steps, Dave? What do you think the first steps should be in terms of setting themselves up for
The first
success?
step is understand what you're trying to achieve and what good looks like, I think. Once you have an idea of that, find a partner. Find somebody who knows how to do this, because you can try and build it yourself, and you probably will get parts of it really right and parts of it not so great. But if you've got a partner who's already fallen down a few holes, then you kind of shortcut a lot of that. So to me, if you know what you're trying to achieve, and what I'm trying to achieve is make it easier for people to work. Right, so take the obstacles out that get between them and getting those jobs. That's a relatively simple thing to get your head around. And now what you've got to do is work your way down, just methodically, unit by unit, what actually currently gets in the way of somebody working. So, to get them from member of public to worker is an onboarding process. How do I truncate that with keeping the quality, but just get rid of the bits of inefficiencies, and so on and so forth. And I think that's what I would do, is start with what you're trying to achieve at a very broad level, break it down into component parts, and find a partner who will help you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave, for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. That's
Thank
brilliant.
you for having me.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Remember, the path to transformation starts with one single step, and that step is often understanding and utilizing data. So join us next time on Tyfano Unravelling Data Mysteries as we continue to explore the world of data. Subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes. Until next time, keep unraveling those data mysteries. Thank you.
And if anyone's got any questions for Dave, they can post them. And Dave, do I have a commitment from you that you'll
I
try
will
to answer
do.
them?
You have that commitment? I will try to answer them.
Thank you. It's been great
And you.
meeting
It's been
you.
lovely to
Cheers,
meet you
Dave.
too.